He's a Benedictine oblate, a two-time Masters World Tandem Surfing Champion, a certified ninja black belt, don't mess with him, and he spent 4 decades pairing physical extremity, big wave surfing, sailing, motorcycling, martial arts with men's discipleship ministry. He's here tonight to share his brand new book, Men of Grit and Grace, Daily Challenges for Men to Chew On. Please welcome the aforementioned Bear Woznick. Bear, thanks for being here. Before we get to the book, I want to wade into the culture for a minute. The Surgeon General's latest advisory flags screens and screen time as a driver of anxiety and disconnection in boys, right as the culture brands ordinary manhood toxic. Now, boys and young men, as you know, are absorbing both those messages at once. What is that doing to them?
Well, I would say it's pretty it can be very tragic. Not just that, but being down in the basement in your mom's house or mom and dad's house playing computer games. But the answer to that is for fathers to take an interest in their sons, and to hand on to them, what their dad handed on to them. If men love to hunt, take your sons hunting, take them for hikes, take them to the hardware store with you. But men need to spend time with their sons, and then push them out the door a little bit. Don't just drop them off at the soccer game or soccer practice. Go and coach it. So the key is the men getting involved in their son's life.
You've called this crisis of masculinity a spiritual crisis, not just a cultural one. What do you mean by that? And where does this vacuum actually start?
Well, you know what, Raymond? I don't even use the word masculinity anymore. It's been co-opted. It's been stolen.
Why not?
And so I just use that terrible word that really provokes a response from people, manliness.
Manliness.
Because the word man comes from the root in Latin is ver, where you get the word virtue. We need to remind men that to be a real man is to be a man of virtue. It's like John Wayne said. I think he was quoting one of my favorite authors, Louis L'Amour, in Western, one of his movies. He said, to be a gentleman, you first have to be a man. And so what we have is we have had young men trade manliness for being nice. When Jesus taught his disciples how to pray, he taught them a very dangerous prayer. He said, "Thy kingdom come, thy will be done." That's a dangerous prayer because it puts men right where we should be, in the middle of God's will. And that means you have to have God's power with you. That means you're going to be bold. You need the virtue of prudence to know how to step into boldness. But the men need to learn to live a life a little bit more dangerously. Step out of the boat. And Jesus, when he prayed that prayer, it brought him right to the cross.
Yeah.
Very dangerous prayer, but men need to begin to. And the reason why I wrote this book, by the way, Men of Grit and Grace, is because so many men say, "Oh, I don't like to read books." So I wrote them one they could just read for a minute at a time. But you know why it's silhouetted in dark?
Tell us.
Like the 12 rules for manliness is bright sun.
Right.
Pretty sunlit.
Right.
It's because a man needs to get up an hour before the rest of his family and pray. That early hour is sacred. And so this book is just meant to give them traction. It's one meditation for each day of the year.
Yep.
One man meditation to just give them traction and get into that daily prayer life, which is so important. That's the spiritual part of the war on masculinity, is to pray.
You were the grandson of a coal miner in North Dakota. Your dad became a state champion basketball coach, then a Catholic deacon known for his spirited homilies. What did your father teach you about toughness and about faith?
Oh, that's so interesting. Well, one of the things my dad always taught me to do is he would always say to me, "Whatever I've done, you're going to even do greater." And remember, Jesus said that to his disciples too. It's an affirming of who I am, but letting me know that I should not settle for mediocrity. That there's something and he also really taught me, Raymond, to set very, very direct goals. Here's one of mine right here. I have so many of these little books, these journals. You probably use these too.
Yeah, I do.
And I write my goals in there, my dreams, and then some of them I'll discern and I'll go, "Oh, well, now I'm going to make that dream into a goal." And then as I start to write it down, things start just happening. So he taught me, though, to set goals that cause you to grow as a man, to grow in virtue. So don't just set meaningless goals. And so I would say more than anything, my dad taught me to set bold goals and to pursue them. And part of that abandonment to the wild adventure of God's will is my beautiful bride, Cindy, who's here with me right now. I know a great reason why we're together is because I pursued the telos to the best that I could, the way God wired me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I totally know what you mean. And you said your ministry flourished after both of your parents passed away. What did losing them teach you about prayer and intercessory prayer?
My dad got me started praying the Liturgy of the Hour. And Stephen Ray's book, Crossing the Tiber, brought me back. And the early church fathers, of course, all those books behind me, the early church fathers. But it was more that I knew my mom and dad. I was with them both when they passed. I put a beautiful, beautiful tuberose lay on my mother as she was breathing her last breaths. And her last breath was, oh, oh, oh. She was seeing Jesus. And then with my dad, I put my hand in his heart as he was breathed his last breath. And I was reading his notes on his homilies at that moment. It was like when they joined forces up there in heaven and began to pray for their children, their grandchildren, pray for me. My ministry, in spite of so many difficulties, the Lord, lifted up the good part of me and the ministry that he called me to. And I guess I would say also so much of the preparation before that was so much of him, that purging, that season of the fire that God takes us all through.
Yeah. Well,
but at that moment, it was their prayers.
I need to get into Men of Grit and Grace, daily challenges for men to chew on. Okay, I'm holding it up. You don't have to. The book book is billed as beef jerky for the soul, Bear. What inspired you to write a book of meditations for men rather than a pure self-help tome?
I mean, a lot of men feel like they're too busy to read, but it's because I know men needed to have this traction. If men aren't getting up before the rest of their family and having at least a half hour, well, if you have a half hour, you're going to want an hour because you're going to want to go further. This gives them manly traction. But if they start with this beef jerky for the soul, then they're going to want more. Then they're going to go, like there's a man I'm going to have a cigar with later today. He reading this book. We read a little bit of this book, and now we're going to go and we're going to talk about Liturgy of the Hour, Office of Readings in the morning. How do you really get traction? So this book is meant to give men manly traction, and then as you get into it, then you can read some of the other beautiful, like, The Imitation of Christ. But that book is kind of too soft for men at first. You know what I mean? It's not. It's a super challenging book, but it's spiritual. And I say, well, this book isn't overly spiritual. It's deeply spiritual. It's right down there at the gritty level for men to help them get traction in their faith.
Well, I love that you built the book structure around the 12 apostles. I mean, these ordinary, flawed guys, a lot of fishermen in the mix, that Christ turned into missionaries, martyrs, leaders of the church, because I think it gives all of us hope. Why use the apostles?
Yes, that's why I did it. Exactly.
Oh, there you go. And what did you learn about them that surprised even you?
It was so cool. Well, you know what? Mother Angelica inspired that.
Yep.
I get goosebumps and I feel like crying.
She loved the apostles.
They're real people. If you put them up on that pedestal, which we do actually put them on pedestals, then you feel like, well, that's them and that's not me. So in the writing of the stories of the apostles, it made them real. Yeah. And the thing about those apostles, they were disciples, but Jesus didn't make them followers. He made them leaders. And leaders need to make leaders, not followers. They followed him because he was a man, because he had the grit and the grace. And so many men, like, they want to live on grit alone, which is a great fortitude. G.K. Chesterton and C.S. Lewis both wrote about how without that particular virtue, the other virtues, when they're in crisis, you can't grow in them. Fortitude is important, but without the Holy Spirit, without knowing maybe in Eucharistic adoration, without experiencing God's love. I mean, God is love. To actually experience his love, that's what boosts you into the grit that it takes to live life. Men need to love God back, experience God's love, find out it's okay to be loved. And a lot of that, Raymond, is in the company of other men.
Yes. Yeah, which is lost. And frankly, the pews are devoid of men, which is a bad tendency. And that's changing. You see a lot of young guys returning to faith. and that's a wonderful movement. You
Yes.
write in the book about channeling anger into discipline, Bear, rather than destruction. Most men, I guess, they either suppress it or they unleash it. What's the third option?
Well, Paul, I believe it was Paul said, "Be angry, but sin not." So if and also I think it was it Fulton. There's so many great saints. You know what? I can't keep who said what together, but so many of it. I think it was at Fulton Sheen. I forget the saint, but he said, if you're not angry when you see certain things happening, if you don't know what to be angry with, then there's something wrong, especially as a man. But that anger needs to be turned into determination.
Yeah, great advice. Men of Grit and Grace, Daily Challenges for Men to Chew On by Bear Woznick is available now at bookstores everywhere, and online you can follow Bear on X at Bear Woznick. Bear, thanks for coming on. We'll see you soon, I hope.
We love, in Hawaii we say we love you, so aloha, which means love. God bless you guys.
Back at you. Thank you.
Okay.